appropriations to order at 6:38. I have one piece of business to bring before us. Just want to take a look at this. Okay. I move that, just have to, we had a little bit of paperwork stuff. On top. So we read the motion in last week. So I asked Deb to come down, speak a little bit about it. So on February 21st, 2017, we approved an appropriation of $170,000 in funding for Phase 2 of the rehabilitation of the HVAC systems at Russell F. Tennant. On February 15th, we approved a loan order of $3.2 million in order to fund the remaining phases of the HVAC rehabilitation. With all the necessary funding approved, with the Water Department was able to consolidate the remaining phases into one large project. CDM Smith has provided a proposed amendment to the March 2017 contract. However, the city auditor will not sign off on the vote of February 21st until that vote is amended. Therefore, the mayor respectfully requests your honorable body to amend the use of the funds voted on February 21st, 2017 to allow for any project expense authorized in the loan order authorization. Please note any portion of the loan authorization not needed will later be rescinded after the project is closed. So, whole lot. So I asked Deb, our wonderful city auditor, if she would come down, kind of walk us through exactly what's going on and why the request came down from the mayor. So, Deb, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, my friend. First of all, thank you for coming down. Certainly appreciate it. We talked a little bit about this last week in committee, talked about how this is a more fiscally sound option, which will give us a little bit more leeway with what we can use some of the funds for, where the way it's worded, the $170,000 has to be used for Phase 2.
Yes, the $170,000 was restricted by the council vote related to Phase 2
okay,
of
perfect.
the HVAC system.
And with this amendment, it gives us a little bit more flexibility on how we're able to use those funds.
If you vote the amendment. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on CDM's amendment. I'm like, no.
Correct.
I apologize. Yes, I have to catch up.
Perfect.
So yes, see, if you amend the use of the $170,000,
yep,
I can then allow for that money to be used for the overall project instead of, it's difficult to limit it because now what's happening for the bidding and stuff like that, as I understand it and speaking with the superintendent, everything's combined. They're, you know, economies of scale dictate they're not going to have to bid multiple packages over time. They're now doing one big project.
Makes sense. Sounds like it'd be fiscally more responsible as well.
And the use of the $170,000 towards the entire project, you won't then have to borrow $170,000 and pay interest cost on borrowed money because you have $170,000 up front. Of the original $170,000, $143,000 was put into a contract with CDM for Phase 2.
Okay.
Some portion of that has actually been expended. There's a little over $62,000 of that original $143 committed to CDM that has not been drawn against. That would go towards like multiple phases. So like they might be doing engineering scope of service on Phase 2 and what would have been Phase 3 and 4 together, that type of thing. So I could use the bond money to pay for everything, but I can't use the $170,000 because of the limitations. So in speaking with the superintendent of the water department, I said we really need to return to the council and amend that vote so that we can do the amendment to the CDM contract.
Gives us a little more flexibility as well.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone have any questions coming from the committee? Anyone else have questions?
What's that?
Oh. Superb.
Can you go over it again? I still don't completely understand.
That's okay.
Sure.
Of the 170, 140 of it's dedicated to Phase 2.
So when the 170 was originally voted, the matter before the municipal council was only for Phase 2 HVAC related design, manifold, that type of stuff. It was for design and engineering and for like the Phase 2 manifold and chillers. So that contract was entered into with CDM. We appropriated $170,000. I believe the actual contract with CDM was $143,500. A year later, approximately, a loan authorization happened for $3.2 million. The $3.2 million is the next phases of the HVAC system project. So phase 2 was going to be engineered and scoped and spec'd out all by itself. And then subsequent phases were going to happen over multiple years, as I understand the original intention of the project, which was going to be much more money than $3.2 million. There was, at some point between the acting superintendent Kennedy and the changes in administration and everything else, it came down as a CIP item, I believe, before your body, and there was an authorization to borrow the funds for $3.2 million. The authorization went through. There's a loan authorization for $3.2 million that this council voted. You had 170 for some engineering expenses associated with phase 2, 3.2, which was for everything, which would encompass phase 2 as well. So now I have a signed contract for $143,500, and the funding source is limited to phase 2, because that's what you said they could spend the money on. CDM is proposing an amendment to the original contract, which was $143,500, and I believe the new proposed contract, the upper limit would be from $143,500, it would go to $391,500. That includes phase 2 and multiple subsequent phases of the HVAC. That's great, but I can only allow them to spend the $143,500 on phase 2, unless you tell me it's okay for them to spend it on something else.
That'll make sense now. Thank you.
Okay?
Thanks for asking, sorry.
Yeah, so,
Perfect.
and you're gonna
Yep.
borrow, if we said no to that, right, I could still use the borrowed money, the loan authorization, because you're gonna allow them to do that. But I have some money left over, the 1.3, plus the 30, approximately, it's a little less than 30,000.
1 point,
Excuse me.
okay, 3.2.
Right, 3.2.
Got it.
So if we don't do that, there'll be cash sitting there authorized for a portion of a project that I can't isolate and allow them to use. So depending on your perspective, do you want to borrow money or use the money that you have? So the recommendation from me to the superintendent was, let's go back down, ask the council if we can spend the balance of that appropriation for any project cost associated with the loan authorization. And then it would be my expectation at some point in time, if all things were equal, we'd be able to reduce the 3.2 at the project end by at least the amount associated with phase 2 that wasn't expended. I believe, from what the superintendent has recently expressed, bless you, there should be some additional cost savings. And I think that was kind of mentioned in the memo that Courtney submitted to the council.
Perfect. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. It's exactly why I wanted to have you come down, Deb. You could articulate it in such a way that it's easier to digest, so certainly appreciate that.
No problem.
Does anyone have any other questions for the city auditor? Deb, thank you as always for the job you do and your accessibility. We certainly appreciate it. You're always a wealth of knowledge, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope it helped.
It certainly
Good night.
did.
Thank you.
All right, so I move to approve, actually, you know what? I'm going to call for a quick 2-minute recess, just so I can get the appropriate wording on the motion. So, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. We're in recess at 6:47. Right back. Thank you.
So didn't wrote a 3-page memo to that. No. Amazon's 23.
Committee at 6:49. Let's see, I move to approve the request of the mayor to amend the use of funds for the rehabilitation voted on February 21st, 2017, to allow for any project expense authorized in the loan order authorization. Please note, any portion of the loan authorization not needed will later be rescinded after the project is closed.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? No. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Great, motion passes. I would call to adjourn at 6:50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:50. Thank you, gentlemen.
You know what I just realized? Here. Yeah, because I had down. Oh, I don't know. It's next week. It's going to. Yeah. There's that meeting.
I'd like to call the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee to order at 6:50. Sitting on this committee are Councilors Dolan as vice chair and Councilor Hall as a member. I have two motions. I have one motion to bring before you this evening. From the dockets and matters discussed in the committee recommendation from the last meeting, I entertain a motion to approve the mayor's request regarding the administration's amended program year 2018 Community Development Block Grant budget from July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 in the amount of $451,821, and to approve the program year 2018 annual action plan and the request that the mayor on behalf of the city of Attleboro be authorized to submit said budget and action plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development prior to March 15, 2018.
Second.
Thank you. May 2015, I stand corrected.
18. So May 15th.
May 15, 2018.
Second.
Been a long day. So, Dorothy Brissett is here. She informed me that we got an email at 4:06 this afternoon that we would be awarded $451,821, which makes me happy because I believe in my heart that any motion in front of the council should be very specific as possible, and I have never been in favor of putting together a motion to the council that would say, well, it's going to be like 25% within a number. That's just not good policy. So we're all very happy that we were prepared to have to do it one way, and then today we finally got the number, which is plenty of time to make the 15 deadline, and it's a great program, and Dorothy's doing a hell of a job. Underline hell. I mean, it's a nervous, wracking procedure because you never know when you're going to know or get anything at all. So, is there any discussions? I think we've covered the CDBG block grants pretty well. So I'll call for a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the business that I have to bring before the committee this evening, with the exception of a guest. I have asked Gary Rajan to appear before the committee tonight to discuss the Dodgeville Dam and actually run through a portion of what's going on the subject. So we are going to be discussing where we have been up to here only, and what we hope to have happen in the future will be discussed at a later date. Gary, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to tonight's committee meeting. So as not to confuse anything, Mayor Haru has sent down a request for a loan authorization that you'll be getting, I guess you're going to be reading later into the council meeting for construction phase 1B for $500,000. So speaking with the council president a little while ago, probably about an hour ago, he mentioned that I should probably speak to the overall large project at the night of the public hearing, and I intend to. I was going to do that tonight, but I'll still provide some background, support one of the requests I have now pending with the council, and then I'll make the larger presentation. In fact, the conservation agent was going to be with me tonight, but when I found out it'll be a smaller version, I said he could stick around and go home, so I don't blame the guy. After a long day's work, he already left. So the matter pending before the municipal council right now, and Mr. Conti, is it okay if I step forward and give a handout?
Please do.
It'd be easier if you could just follow my logic. Get this handout.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to write my committee meetings by hand because I'm not allowed to have a computer at the dais while we have committee meetings. It's a little distracting.
So the matter that the mayor communicated to the council a few weeks ago is a request for $16,000 for construction contingency for Phase 1A. That's the matter before the council. I'd like to speak with you about that to give you the background. But as Councilor Conti asked, he said, if you can just give us a little background to this. So the genesis of this project, and again, I'm going to go over this a little
Point of
in more
order.
detail.
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Heather?
I'm sorry.
So I'm going to touch on this in greater detail on the 15th, but let me just step back a little bit. The genesis of all this kind of goes back to 2012, when the state dam safety came down and did inspections of Dodgeville Pond Dam and determined that it's a high hazard dam. Fast forward to tonight. So we began work, the administration, former administration began work on this, and the first step was to get a design of the dam. I applied for a dam and seawall grant. It was awarded. It was a $125,500 contract. It was all funded by the state. The city didn't put any funds in it. We completed that in June of 2016. I then applied for a second grant for construction. I had put in, it was about a little over $1 million. There were going to be three phases of construction, 1, 2, and 3. Unfortunately, we only received a $250,000 grant for that grant application for Phase 1 construction. If you only got $250,000, the city would have had to put over $750,000 into the project. So what we did is I called the state and found out if we could break Phase 1 into 2 separate phases so that the amount of exposure to the city would be limited, so that if we could break it off, we could ask for another grant for Phase 1, if you may. And the state said fine. So if you recall, we broke Phase 1 into Phase 1A, Phase 1B. The cost of Phase 1A is on your estimated construction here at $312,000. The state let us use the whole $250,000 toward Phase 1A. So in order to match that, there was a 25% local cash match. So the $312,000, the state put in $250,000. The city put in the $62,500. The municipal council approved that $62,500, and that's what made the whole project whole at $312,000 for Phase 1A. Of that, $40,000 was a contract. There is a contract with GECA Environmental. It's the resident engineer. We then went out for bid, and as it turned out, bids came in a little lower than the estimated price. So the lowest responsive bid is $269,500. So if you add those two up, it comes at $309,500. But because I have $312,500, I have a balance of $3,000 that's in the black. Okay, I'm going to assume there's no questions as I'm going through, okay? So, but going into it, much like the cantilevered walkway, I had requested the council several months ago a contingency of $95,000. I said 7% was sufficient because it was thoroughly engineered. So to follow that policy out of fairness and continuity, I asked for yet another 7% contingency. That would have come out to $18,865, but because I still have a positive delta of 3, I requested of the mayor 16. I just rounded up. So instead of asking for $15,865, I just asked for 16. So if you were to appropriate the 16, I'd have a contingency of $19,000 altogether. I'd like to inform you that the project's been bid, like I said, the contracts have all been signed. Carol Brown, the purchasing agent, issued the notice to proceed yesterday. Spoke with the contractor, they're mobilizing, and I'm expecting completion of Phase 1A in about 4 to 5 weeks. So for tonight's purposes, I'm respectfully asking the council to consider an appropriation of $16,000 for contingency, and exactly like I said with the Candid Legal Walkway, whatever we don't spend, and if we don't spend any of it, it all comes back. So it's not going to because of any increase in construction costs or anything like that. It's just to have that 16 plus the 3 I already have for $19,000 in reserve. If I use some of it, it's because of an unforeseen matter, and if we don't use it, we would give it back to the, right back into the coffers.
So in our last committee meeting, I made the motion and the committee approved the 7% construction contingency. Tonight, at the city council regular meeting, I will put forth the motion to the full council for a vote.
Excellent, thank you so much. And as I said, I'll be here on the 15th, and I will give a complete presentation, a little more in detail, backing up to the design, all the way through construction phase 3. What I can tell you is the good news. While we were in the midst of phase 1A and we secured the $250,000, I also applied for phase 1B and I secured another $500,000 grant, so we have that as well. Already spoke with the state because we're bumping up against fiscal year June 30th, 2018 for FY18. I also called the state and made accommodations. The state's willing to roll that money into FY19 as well. So I've already taken all that action to put things into place so there isn't any pressure on the council to hurry up and take a vote immediately. Plus, it's prudent management to move things along as we can anyhow. So again, I'll go into greater detail with that on the 15th.
Councilor Dolan?
Can you just repeat, what are you rolling over? I missed that.
Sure. For construction phase 1A, for construction phase 1B, I already applied for that. Already got a $500,000 grant for that too.
Oh, how you got 500 for that?
I also, yes, so the $250,000 is for 1A. I also secured a $500,000 for 1B. But
And what are you rolling over? You said you were rolling.
that $500,000, the
Okay.
phase 1B funds.
Okay.
So the state's going to be sending me an amended contract where the end date would be June 30th, 2019, Mr. Conti.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Mays? Yes.
So Phase 1B, when do you anticipate the whole project being done?
I'm sorry?
The whole project, when will the whole project be done?
Great question. So I want to jump ahead to the May 15th presentation a little bit, okay? So like I said, there were 3 phases altogether. Phase 1 we broke into 2, 1A and 1B. There's also phase 2 and also phase 3. We're going to get into some deep discussion on the 15th because phase 1A is essentially a coffer dam. It is standalone, and that's important to understand because one of the things I want to know from our engineers, and I'm glad you asked that question from GZA, is I didn't want to spend taxpayer money, even though it's a grant, and on Local 62.5, if that phase 1A wasn't going to buy us anything. If it was just going through the motion just to get us to 1B, I wasn't going to pursue it. And they reassured me that phase 1A is standalone, though temporary. Temporary could be 5 years to 10 years, but it takes a tremendous pressure off that the dam, and I'll get into the public benefits of securing that dam. Phase 1B is standalone. It will only serve to augment the longevity of the life service, Councilor, of the coffer dam. But 1A and 1B is not the end all, okay? And that's why I don't want to get through 1A and 1B and then in little buckets along the way keep, I go back down to the council, back down to the council. I want to give you the full picture as part of the loan authorization for 1B to tell you ultimately what we're going to get into. So you asked me how much longer for the construction of the whole picture. Coupled together, 1A and 1B would likely give us a life expectancy of that dam, probably another 10 years. In a certain extent, 10 years is a short period amount of time, but 10 years is also buying us time. So it's not requiring us or compelling the city to start considering the cost of an addition. I'm going to get, no, I don't want to give you a sticker shock of a few more $1 million. Right now, phase 2 construction is the actual construction of the dam itself, the concrete dam. Right now, that figure stands at about 2.6 million. I've already called the state to find out how much are we looking for grant funds. Because in one instance, they gave us $125,500 for design. Second instance, they gave us $250,000. This current instance, they gave us $500,000. Well, like, where does it go? So without painting anyone into a corner, the answer is somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million. Okay? That's not the end all. Then the end all after that, and phase 3 could be conceivably considered optional, but I don't know, it's called a crest gate. That actually operates a wall that allows water to run over the dam and shut off, so it's good for flood control up gradient. That third phase, Counselor, we're looking at conceivably on the low end, $711,000, upwards to $1,027,000. Okay? Each of those, we will have grants. For phase 3, one of the items that we're looking at very, very hard is, as I mentioned about a year ago when I came down for the $62,500 for phase 1A, you had asked, Gary, what are the public benefits? Why are we doing this? Among them, Council, if you recall, I said one of the public benefits is the potential for hydropower, so that we could have that net metered so that it could reduce municipal energy costs.
The reason why I asked the question is because the dam is privately owned.
Correct.
If the dam goes into an energy producing mode, will it still be privately owned?
Well, before I answer that, hold that. There were actually 2 reasons you called. You said, what are the benefits, A? And secondly, it's private. Why are we spending public dollars on private? 2 reasons. A, the state, it's eligible for that. And B, a lot of the dams are privately owned. Those owners can't afford to maintain those or reconstruct it. And rather than breaching it, a controlled breach, which is man-made to take it down, and heaven forbid, a catastrophic breach. So there was buy-in and said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So those were the 2 reasons why you did. You're right, it wasn't just one. They were kind of coupled, Counselor. Now, could you ask your question again? I'm sorry.
So the question is that if the dam is privately owned and it becomes a hydroelectric source of energy, does the private owner own the electric generation?
We've already had those discussions with Demers Trucking Company. We would have all the memorandums of agreements and other covenants in place so that it would be the city's, and he's already agreed to that. So where am I going with that? I mentioned to you right now preliminarily, phase 2 construction is estimated about $2.6 million. If the state picks up upwards of $500,000 to $1 million, there's a local exposure. There's probably going to be some funds put in by the owner, maybe $250,000 or so, but that leaves us roughly with $1 million. We've been working with GZA Environmental, our consultant, has been working with another consultant who's working on some cutting-edge technology where rather than building a concrete dam, they're working on a process where the dam would consist of a series of chambers. Much like, maybe this is an oversimplification, but just think of the tractor-trailer part of the truck, the trailer part, where there's a door in the back. So think of a series of those structures as chambers sunk into the water, and water would flow past through those if you open the water. There'll be bladders to open and close. Well, we're working with this company on this prototype where rather than building a concrete wall, these chambers would be immersed in the river. And they're also working, they applied for, but I will tell you they got denied, and they're going to go back and apply again with Mass Innovate. With Mass Innovate, they requested $167,000 to develop the design of a turbine. The turbine would be installed inside of this chamber. We'd only need 2 of them. So that as the water passes through the chamber, makes the turbine spin, so we would not need a separate exterior building where the power would be transferred to a structure. Would just be through that turbine, again, an oversimplification, but to the utility pole. those could be picked up in part or a substantial amount by the federal government. So I go through that technical dissertation. Again, I'm trying to not go too far into it, but aside from the state dam and seawall grant program, the municipal share, a proportion of that by the owner, we're also pushing hard that we might not even build a concrete wall, but we might pursue this other prototypical design. This other engineering company, Littoral Power Systems, was to have obtained the grant in March of 2018, just last month, 2 months ago, and to develop the prototype by March 2019. They didn't get the grant. Called, I spoke with the chief engineer, and they're going to reapply again. So I said earlier that phase 2 and phase 3 would probably be put out about 10 years, even though I said in some terms it could be short-term or long-term. But what that does is it buys us really time. So if we finish 1A and 1B in the short term by June 2019 with phase 1A, assuming if the council were to appropriate the loan authorization, that buys us some breathing room. So it's not like I'm going to come around 18 months from now and knock on the door and say, okay, well, we need to cough up this additional funds. You know, by that time, we've got some breathing room, the dam's functioning, it's protected, the breach could go down from, right now it's considered a high hazard. There's what they call a significant hazard, a high hazard, and a low hazard. Right now it's at high hazard. In terms of condition, it's good, fair, poor, and I think the worst one is significant. We're at poor. So we're right on the cusp of a significant hazard and significant in terms of condition. Condition has to do with structural integrity. The hazard has to do with public safety, life, and the environment. So there's a qualitative piece, which is the hazard, and there is a structural piece, which is the condition. So they're both, in both instances, it's one notch from the bottom. So because of that, phase 1A and phase 1B will buy us sufficient time, not for 20 years or 25 years, but for a good 10-year period, and that's coming from the engineers, to secure Dodgeville Pond. And then in the meantime, we'll go into phase 2. We might be able to break phase 2 in a couple of phases, particularly if we are able to get the federal grants, which would then, through this innovative technology for the hydropower piece of it. And then, like I said, there's a construction phase 3, and I will go through that with soup and nuts on the May 15th meeting. By that time, you've already called for a public hearing. I think that has to go to the planning board, I think, yeah, for a loan authorization recommendation. So that'll all be put away by the 15th, and I'll come and make a more an in-depth presentation than compared to tonight.
Thank you, Gary. Any other questions for Mr. Asian? Well, I'm glad this got aired tonight. If people at home have any questions, they can certainly contact your office.
Anytime.
Or if they have concerns, they could contact the committee members or their counselors. Thank you very much, Gary.
All right, thank you all. Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So that concludes the business that I have to bring before you this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's in order. All in favor?
Aye.
7:12. Thank you so much. Just go. Signature.
Call the council to order at 7:17. Please join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I am going to entertain a motion to, there are no records to approve. I am going to entertain a motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of going out of order to do committee of the whole sooner rather than later in the meeting. So I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
And will be a roll call vote, and it will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delizio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes. So we are operating under suspended rules, and I would entertain a motion to enter committee of the whole.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council on any matter of city business? Now would be the appropriate time.
Good evening. Jim Castro, 36 Hazelwood Ave. Thank you for taking the time to change your agenda tonight to accommodate me and for lending your ear. As many of you know, I was the financial analyst to the Municipal Council, the one and only in the history of the city here. And I understand that you're interviewing or looking for a new advisor. So I thought it'd be an appropriate time just to kind of share my thoughts on the position and really how it's been utilized, how it can be utilized going forward. So, what the position has been. Early on, the position back in the day, we get the budget and it'd be on paper. And so a lot of the time was just spent analyzing the budget. What did it change by? This percentage, that line item, this line item. A lot of that became less necessary over time. And I think those of you, Peter in particular, that have been around a long time with me, kind of saw that change. So there wasn't as much need for analysis and spending time on individual line items. And frankly, through the years, really whatever little bit of fat was in the budget got squeezed out. There's not a lot of fat in the annual budget between contracts and commitments that are made throughout the year. When the budget's presented, and the administration certainly has every incentive in the world to squeeze every dollar they can out of the annual budget. So, those things have a lot less emphasis than they used to. I started spending less time doing that and trying to spend more time doing other things. And I think that's really where the time should be spent. There certainly were times where, I'd catch an error here or there mathematically or in a spreadsheet, and I do think it's good. A lot of pressure is put on the budget and admin person to basically produce the whole thing, and there aren't always a second set of eyes. So there is some merit in looking at some of those items, but again, analyzing supplies in a certain department, it doesn't really provide a lot of benefit, I think, to anybody. The other observation I had was early on, it was very much a us versus them mentality with the administration and the council. And over time, that kind of morphed, kind of went the other way where, it seemed at times that there wasn't really a check and balance on the administration. So, I think just like when I audit somebody, you need a healthy skepticism, but it's more of a trust but verify mentality versus an us versus them mentality. Because, ultimately, this body as well as the administration want what's best for the city. So where do I think, the council and really their future analysts should focus on, or more of the big picture matters, things that really affect people. providing an independent review of the administration is a great use of the financial analyst for things that the council either doesn't have the time or expertise to analyze. So, some of the things just recently that have come up that, crossed my mind. You hear things in the paper or said, oh, hey, if the city buys Highland, it's going to save money because they're going to build houses and there's going to be kids and it's going to cost us money. And everyone just kind of accepts that as a fact. It may be a fact. I don't know. Who said that? Who determined that? We're building a new high school. It's going to have excess capacity. I mean, maybe we want additional houses. I mean, a community needs children. They need young people in the city. So, it's just certain things like that that you see that just get thrown out there, and they just become accepted as fact because they get repeated time and again. So, what would the lost tax revenue be if that was converted to city-owned land versus the tax revenue that would be produced? How many children would there be? How many houses would there be? These are things I think it'd be great for you guys to have some analysis on that now, where there is a potential that the city could buy that property, but versus just operating off of what somebody said. Another example is with the debt exclusion that recently passed. There were numbers put out there by the administration that said this is the cost on the average homeowner. I mean, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. They were numbers, but I don't know if anyone actually had the time or spent the time to analyze those figures to say, are they actually right? Where are they coming from? Again, even with Highland, oh, they're going to build 110 houses. Well, is that the right number, or is that just what one person said? What's the overall cost of the high school debt service 20 years versus 30 years? Some numbers were thrown out there. Did anyone verify it? Those are the types of things I, as a taxpayer, would love to see someone on the council side check, not only as a check and balance, but also, people make mistakes. And, again, you have plenty of business to do. You may not always have the time or expertise to go deep into those numbers. Looking at the budget, like I said, 99% of that is set by the time that you receive it. I find votes are taken throughout the year that have a significant impact on the budget. So, understanding the impact of those votes on the budget is more important than spending time on the budget when it gets there, because the decisions have already been made. One of my favorite things was always the indirect costs. We'd do an indirect cost study. It would come down. It would say, oh, the water and wastewater department need to pick up, X million dollars of indirect costs. Here's the study, and here's the budget. Well, if you guys don't agree with the study, or you think there's an issue with the study, well, now you got to cut $1 million out of the operating budget. So, you didn't have the opportunity to actually look at the analysis. That was, again, always a pet peeve of mine. On the last study, I called up the person that did it, and I asked him some legitimate questions, and he either didn't know the answer, or he said, yeah, we could have handled that differently. For instance, I remember one question I asked, I said, gee, you've got this big charge in here for fire department overtime. Well, the fire department has to go and shovel out fire hydrants, and then they have to, during snowstorms, and we added up all that time. I said, well, is that a firefighting expense, or is that a water expense? I don't know. You guys do this for a living. Well, I don't know. You could do it either way, but that's the way they've done it in the past. So, again, these are just examples of really, I think, the bigger picture things versus going back and looking at individual line items. Estimated receipts, direct impact on the budget. Are they reasonable or are they not? The overlay, that has a, that's always just, these are numbers that just get thrown out and never looked at. The overlay has a big impact. If that number is too high, it kind of affects, it ends up being like a extra tax because it adds to the tax base, but we don't actually collect the money, but the next year that goes up by 2.5%. It can kind of inflate what the actual tax burden is on the taxpayers. So, but again, never did anyone really look at that. other things, going way back, one of my favorite, the ERI. Back in 2003, we had an early retirement incentive. We could have picked, we will allow one person from DPW with 20 years of experience, but no, we opened it up to the entire city. So we ended up having like 25 people retire, 3 or 4 of them didn't get replaced. In next year's budget, that ERI costs $406,000. And we're gonna pay for that for 10 additional years. So here's something that with a huge impact that was voted on, and at the time I expressed some concern. I wish I had been stronger about it, but these are the types of things that have a long-term impact. And maybe, there was definitely some short-sightedness at that point in time. The COLA that got voted last year, it's going to cost $116,000 out of next year's budget. So I think you had good information on that, but that's a lifetime, increase to the budget. So when the budget comes down, that's already factored in. Same thing with raises. Again, being on the retirement board, I see the impact of those. Sometimes, you look at the individual year and what the impact is. A lot of times the raise would go into effect on January 1st. Well, guess what? That's a 2% now. It's 4% automatically next year, plus whatever the raise is going to be next year. And then when we go to do the retirement valuation, they say, oh, we were expecting your liability to be X. Well, it's really X plus, $200,000 because salaries increased more than we expected. So there are it affects more than just that annual budget. Relationship between overtime and hiring public safety officers. That was one of the analysis I did about 15 years ago. That was one of the better ones. I was surprised myself. Everyone thinks overtime's a dirty word, but sometimes it actually makes a lot of sense to pay more overtime than to hire more firefighters. There's also a big reality, just when you have so many people, there's so much overtime, and unless you're overstaffing. So, but again, that was a good use of the position and the type of thing that I think you should consider in the future. Other things are, debt service in the operating budget. What should it be? What's a good number for that to be at? The council should at least have an understanding of that. Obviously, the administration runs the city and the mayor sends down the budget, but the council should have some say in things like that. What should be paid out of the budget versus financed each year. Let's see. So in general, I don't think I ever really had a problem with this, but sometimes I believe, in my opinion, the analyst was kind of looked at as the budget chair's person. And really, I think the position should be available to all councilors, but either through the chair or through the president, just to make sure they're not getting 11 different requests at all times. The type of individual, needs to be able to provide unbiased and apolitical feedback. That's important. Obviously, it's the elected official's job to set policy, not this position. It should really be more about verifying figures and providing opinions. So like I said, I think utilizing someone for special projects is really the way to go versus spending a lot of time analyzing a budget which has already been analyzed for hours and hours and hours. Again, another example, when we had a natural disaster in the not too far past, boom, here's, $200,000. You guys get it at 6 p.m. You have to approve it tonight and get it up to the state. It's an emergency. Who knows what's in there? You're being asked to vote on something you haven't had a chance to analyze. That's something that I think, an advisor could help with. So I think that's about it. I think in my time here, I kind of saw the position go from having a lot of responsibility and being given a lot of projects to basically not really being utilized all that effectively, which is one of the reasons that I stepped back, because I didn't want to just be in a position to have the title. Thank you for listening, and I really appreciate you indulging me.
Sure. Any questions? Councilor Hall, Dolan, Conti, Gomez? Oh.
So Jim, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, Councilor Delistio and I brought in some new business that when we wanted to form some sort of like finance committee, like other cities and towns has a finance committee, and one of the positions that we wanted to have sort of running this thing was a budget analyst. So let me ask you this question. Do you think that a finance committee that has some strong financial background on it could be of value also in addition to this, or could run on its own without an analyst, if you would?
Are you saying like an ad hoc committee?
Yes.
That the council would appoint?
Yes.
I think that would be great, yeah. Yeah, because I think, like I said, if you can get the people to be responsive to you, absolutely. Like I said, I think the position, in my mind, has or should have morphed from analyzing line items to really giving advice on larger picture issues. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Conti.
That was the subject of my question. Jim, thank you for coming here. I think we probably could add tax classification to your long list of where we could use some advice. And but I think our efforts to try to get a finance committee in the past has not really worked well, but I think it can work well. And I think most often the issue is that councils, well, this is about your opinions to us, and I appreciate them. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Coates.
Yeah, Mr. Conti, I would just respond and say, anytime, this is my philosophy on anything, but if you do get a committee together, the most important thing is to utilize them. Right? The worst thing in the world is to ask someone to do something, but then not ask them to do anything.
Correct.
Become disengaged very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Castro, for coming. I definitely appreciate it. A lot of what you said resonated with me, especially when talking about providing oversight from the administration and unbiased analysis. I think there's a lot of value in receiving that from somebody with credentials such as yours. And I was wondering if you could talk about what kind of credentials you feel whoever would fill this role should have.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult to find someone that could hit the ground running. I know I certainly did not. So I learned, like anyone else, just by kind of going through the process. Anyone that has been involved in the municipal government in one manner or another, I think would certainly be helpful. Other than that, I think, to Councilor Hall's point, if you get people with financial skills, I think they can probably grasp the concepts and kind of analyze these things if they're explained to them up front. Two of the, I think twice now I've served on an ad hoc committee by the mayor, one for the tax shift and one for the IBP, and those are both great experiences, and certainly none of us coming in had great experience in those areas, but just the differing opinions and experiences of those groups, I thought we really worked well together, and I think we provided some good advice back to the mayor.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Councilor Priga.
Thank you very much, President Cooper. Jim, thanks for coming in tonight. You standing here makes me long for the days when you used to sit over there during budget meetings. Like, truly.
Thank you.
We've gone through some, the 2016 budget by ourselves. It literally, that night, brought me to my knees. I went home and literally crashed on the floor. And I am very excited about the fact that you're here tonight, because it shows that, this council, we all talked about what we wanted when we were running for re-election, and this is one of the things that it's been funded in the budget. We haven't done anything about it. I'm really glad to see that, we're getting someone who has had the experience, could hit the ground running. I'm not hinting at anything or anything like that, but those are it brings me great joy to see that we're on our way to this. And I don't know if it ever took place. I don't know if you were ever officially or publicly thanked for your service to our city and to the municipal council, because that, when you left, it was kind of at the end of budget season and we were all on vacation.
Yeah.
Please take my personal gratitude and thank you. And I'm glad that you're still someone who, if I have a question or a problem, I can pick up the phone and call and ask. So thank you for that, Jim. I appreciate it.
This is my home, like all yours.
I'd like to echo part of Heather's comments. I sat through many meetings with Jim.
Yeah.
The other room. We had some differences of opinion. And
absolutely.
I think on occasion we flip-flopped, but it was great to have somebody that, and I will say, had an independent view without any bias on either way. And Jim did a great job. And I felt much more at ease after we went through a budget and Jim was there to analyze and to make some suggestions and to explain things that the average person of us sitting on this semicircle really don't really understand without an expert telling us. So whether it's Jim or somebody, and it's going to be tough to match his qualifications, and if we do, we're going to be very fortunate if we get somebody of our expertise. But you did a real great service to the city when you were on. I appreciate it, and we had a decent understanding.
What do they say? If you know, if people agree, then there's one too many people in the meeting, or something like that, right?
We didn't come to real blow. It was good. It was good conversation. We had good meetings.
Yeah.
It filtered out real well in the end.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds, then Hall, then Delicio.
So I just want to say, I loved it when you were back there, actually. I thought you came up with a lot of things, and I like what you
I didn't come to get praised.
No, I know that, but I want to say what you said tonight, which I think is important, is verifying figures and their impact. I think that's why we've really wanted a financial analyst, and why I think that what Ms. Hall is saying is great, but what we really need is the financial analyst first. That's what I think is important, somebody that actually does this. And one of the things that you spoke about tonight was the indirect cost, which has always been an issue with me. And I like I know we had it done. I'm not necessarily sure, and I will say this over and over again, that it is done correctly. I really think it has to be done on an unbiased way, that real hours and whatnot need to be addressed, and I'm not really sure that that was done. That's my own feeling, so I'm speaking for myself, that the indirect cost is a huge issue. And I think those things about verifying the figures and their impact is what an analyst would do for us and say, these are where these things should be cut, or even you know, all the things we talked about, early retirement or the COLA and the raises, all of the impact these things have on the city budget as a whole. Because sometimes we want to do it based on not only the people that we know that work here, but we think the budget has an opportunity for these increases possibly. And we don't know all those things. That is not our, which is what Jim is saying, that is not our expertise. So I would go along with what Jim has said today, is that we really need to find that person that can say to us, this is, if you do this, this is the impact on the budget in the years to come. Or, yes, we need to do, again, indirect costs and have it done this way, and really know what the hours and whatnot are. So I appreciate you coming in and really putting it down like A to B, as someone that understands it, and being honest about the fact that he learned while doing it too. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we need help on, because that is not our expertise, and I just really appreciate that you came forward and spoke about this.
Welcome, Councilor Hall, and then Delicio.
Thank you. And I appreciate that too, because as I'm listening to it and then thinking back in terms of this document that we wrote, it had the budget analyst as the key person on this committee, if you would, or helping as an unbiased person to help derive some of these things, because I don't think one person can do all the things that we need to have happen. We need people that can look at efficiencies in our budget also and find ways, you talk about squeezing out that dollars, but we need to squeeze out those dollars in a most efficient way. And, one thing we always ask about in different budgets is, is this really what you need? Have you looked for efficiencies, things like that? And I just think it would do a world of good. I don't know if it would be beneficial. If you would like, I have that still. I can send it out to everybody to take a look, and if it would be possible for maybe to Mr. Castro to take a look at what we suggested and see what his feelings are about a committee and the budget and analysts and how that would all work together. I don't know if that would be beneficial. If you'd like for me to do that, I'd be happy to do that.
I think distributing it to everybody is not, something that should happen, and I can revisit it with the current administration.
Thank you.
That's what I say.
Thanks. Jim, it's good to see you as always. So, as you're talking, I thought about the time that I was on the council and you were here. Certainly the value add, but we learned last year just truly how cumbersome this process is. One thing I've talked about so far in this term is, the budget process doesn't end 45 days after, the budget comes down. So, your advice, what would it be to a first-time budget chair in terms of how do we continue and how does the committee best utilize the financial analysts when they come down so it doesn't end right after that 45-day mark?
I think the key thing is to try to understand throughout the course of the other 11 months that certain things that come before your body have a significant impact not only on the current year budget, but on future budgets. Mm-hmm. And to be able to identify those things and get feedback on those things from either your committee or your analyst is really critical, because by the time the budget comes down, like I said, 99% of that is set in stone. The only thing you guys really have control over at that point is if there's really some priority that you want to rob from Peter to give to Paul, and that's about it.
Sure.
So I'm glad you brought up the budget again being 99% baked when it comes down. So I know that we usually will go through the hearings and we'll have each of the department heads. Do you see value in that? Do you find in a budget where it's already 99% baked, there's not going to be, well, I don't want to lead one way or another. I'm just interested in your thoughts.
I think the department heads appreciate it.
Yep.
And for me, someone that wasn't here every single week, there was certainly value in, understanding each department, giving them an opportunity to speak to the council. Came back to the early days where some of those would be 90 minutes, or on average they were probably 45 minutes a department. I'm not so sure that's necessary, but I think giving everyone a few minutes of time to highlight the budget or just what's going on, because they could be talking about, I know you have separate hearings on capital improvements, but, just overall needs of their department. And, it gives you an opportunity to speak to them. They have to go to the mayor first, so this is your opportunity to speak to them.
Okay, and I'm glad, just one more thing. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because part of what the plan is to have everyone come down. I just wanted to hear your feedback on that, so thank you. I'm glad you brought up capital improvements. Councilor Conti and I on the floor several times have talked about how there should be more symmetry between capital improvements and budget. Could you talk a little bit about what your thought would be on that and how you think we could best achieve that?
Well, there's a couple of things in the budget that are capital improvements, but then a lot of things get funded outside of that. As I said, I think part of it is having an understanding of, what types of things should be paid for out of the operating budget, what types of things should be paid for out of free cash on an ongoing basis, so that it helps everyone to plan accordingly, and it kind of lets everyone know what their priority is. The one thing that would concern me would be that, some departments would wait, year after year after year to be funded, and then someone else, everything would be an emergency, so they'd get funded right away. Right. And, maybe it was a legitimate emergency. Again, I don't know. I wasn't out there walking the grounds of the item. But, you know, I think having a funding policy that the administration and the council agree to the framework of would be very helpful. And then anytime there's a variance from that policy, you can dive deeper.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me just give all fellow councilors sort of an update on where we stand. And
I had nothing to say.
oh, okay.
I liked what you just said, so maybe some research around if departments are doing this emergency request versus thoughtful planning of the budget and knowing what they need. But also, I would like to see similar cities and towns that have a budget and do an overlay of Attleboro with how we compare. I understand a lot of the budget is tied up in contracts, but it would be interesting to see how they fund departments versus how Attleboro does.
Yeah, I think that can be useful. I think you have to be very careful, though, because you really have to make sure that you're comparing like kind to like kind and not, you know, there's so much that goes into it. You know, when we talk, you know, we could talk about a lot of things, but, you know, like even like school funding, right? You know, that has a lot more to do with where you were 20 years ago than where you are today, because you kind of got locked in when they set up the net school spending thing. So it just, comparisons are good as long as they're good, as long as they're meaningful. You know, you can compare anything and get it to say anything you want. But best practices certainly, and what's working for other communities, I think is probably even more important.
Okay.
Sorry.
So now I'll tell you. The sort of what happened in the timeline shortly after becoming president of the council, Councilor Delisio came to me and said, what are we doing about the financial analyst? So I went to personnel, and we tried to find a contract that you may have had that we couldn't find. So we drafted and posted the position on the city site. We didn't get any response. Owen contacted me and asked me what I wanted to do for next steps. So we posted it on the MMA site. We got one applicant who thought it was a full-time position, and your presentation tonight fits perfectly into my plan, because clearly neither the description that we have nor the funding amount, I think, is adequate to attract what we're looking for in this position. So we all think it's necessary to have this position. Then we got to put our wallet where our mouths are, because $5,000 to do all the things that Mr. Castro mentioned isn't going to cut it. So, Jim, thank you for coming, and I think it sort of fits nicely into what I've sort of been trying to prove.
Just a quick history on the fee too, and this again had nothing to do with. I mean, I was the one that cut it to $5,000, but it was set at $10,000 when the position was created, and that was probably in 2000. And then as I became less and less utilized, I told them to cut it to $5,000. So, you know, I'm not saying that it's too low or it's too high. There are so many people in this city that do so much work and get nothing for it. You know, and I look at the planning and zoning board in particular. So, you know, it all depends upon what you're trying to attract. But if you want to open it outside of a good-hearted Attleboro citizen, you might need to pay more.
But yeah, and I think that's, so again, this fits perfectly into my plan, right? So we've had it posted. We've had it posted since probably at least the beginning of March, till we posted it on the MMA site and paid $400-ish for it to be posted. We've had one person who didn't read the posting as a stipend paid position, who applied for it as a full-time position in their cover letter. So I've had a few other sort of town inquiries from people in town, but that's it. So we need to work on what our expectations are for the position, get it properly posted and get it properly funded to make it attractive for someone to join this team and go through this process and prioritize which of these things that you listed are of greater importance, because even at $10,000, this person isn't going to have the insight that you have or that you would bring to this, you know, immediately. So thank you again for coming tonight. And it was, you know, another counselor brought it to me about, you know, you coming, and I thought, well, this is perfect. I didn't, because I didn't want it perceived as the council president is sort of out, sort of setting the stage for a funding request for, and a job change request for the financial analyst. So this was beautifully orchestrated without orchestrating anything. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address the council and committee of the whole? Yeah, let him come.
Hello, my name is Francis Balut from 120 Carrier Avenue, South Attleboro. My intention was different, not to come up here and speak at this point in time, because the subject was, if it came up during the meeting, that I would then have the opportunity to give input. So I'm looking for some help on procedure here. Could I say maybe a little bit more? The subject would actually have been on a title that's in reference to a draft ordinance for marijuana business.
So,
so if that subject is brought up
so that is business.
And discussed, would I be able to then get up and speak under the?
Not until we get to the public hearing component of.
Will there be a public hearing on this? Because it is a draft, and I want the entire council to know that I really appreciate receiving this 11-page document, which I had gone through late this afternoon in substantial detail. Could I at least also mention that I had gone to the third outreach information, which occurred last night. And of course, you know, I've been to Boston, any time the subject came up. But at that time, at this third meeting, I was told that sales of recreational marijuana would only be at the processing plant.
Point of order, just as clarification for myself, is when it's committee of the whole and it's already business that's in front of the municipal council, are we allowed to have that discussion?
So he's in my opinion, he's bordering matter before the council, right? So he started talking about the draft ordinance, then he stopped, then he started talking about the public meetings, which are not matters before this honorable body. So if he's providing insight into those meetings, I think that I'm okay with that. But as you start to go back to asking specific questions about recreational use or not, that is a matter before the council. So
could I at least have the date of this
actually, Francis, I have something for you.
Public hearing?
I have something for you, and I know you'll read it. I picked this up at the MCLE, which is a building next to us, and it's the Law and Business of Marijuana Dispensaries, and the guy I picked it up for was for you, because in it is all the case law about both medical and recreational marijuana. So I grabbed this copy for you, and I'll give it to you after the meeting tonight, so don't go away.
Thank you.
And it is, so I think you're probably on the cusp of things that are before the council, an issue that is currently before the council that we can't seek input from the public on at this time. What I will tell you, though, is that the 11-page draft that you receive will have a public hearing. And at that time, you're more than welcome to speak about the matters of the 11 pages that you reviewed today.
Thank you very much, President Cooper.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the committee of the whole at this time? Hearing none, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to arise.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, thank you. We will go on to the public hearings. Madam Clerk, would you read the first public notice for the first public hearing?
Notice is hereby given in accordance with Chapter 40A, Section 5 of Massachusetts General Law that a public hearing be held by the Attleboro Municipal Council on Tuesday, May 1st, 2018, in the council chambers, 77 Park Street, Attleboro, Mass, relative to the following. Public hearing relative to the joint petition from National Grid and Verizon requesting permission to erect and maintain poles and wires at the north side of pole 4969-84 on the north side of Maple Street.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there any? Come right up.
Good evening. Matt Eustace for National Grid. Here just to ask that...
So what was your name? Sorry.
Matt Eustace, 245 South Main Street, Hopedale.
Great, thank you.
So I'm just here to speak on behalf of the company that we asked for the ability to install the poles that here on this public hearing.
Great. Are there any questions for the gentleman on the first public hearing? Hearing none. Thank you, but don't go far, because there's a second one, but we'll have to read the notice. So I'm going to just see if there's anybody else to speak in favor or in opposition, and then we'll call you back up for the second.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak? Is there anyone else to speak in favor of this public hearing? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Is there anyone to speak neither for nor against? Hearing none. Vice President Parika, you are second for Councilor Jackson, is that right? Yes. So would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes, President.
So, thank you. I declare this public hearing closed. Madam Clerk, would you read the second notice for the second public hearing tonight?
Public hearing relative to the joint petition from National Grid and Verizon requesting permission to erect and maintain poles and wires at the east side of pole 3445-84 on the east side of Hickory Road.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in favor?
Matt Eustace with National Grid, here to ask for your approval of the request for the pole.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone? Council Blair.
I know you're new at this, but could you give us a little background? You're putting in a pole?
Yeah, so are you referring to Hickory Street or both? What is here specific?
Well, let's do Hickory Street. We passed the other one, but I'm just trying to get you in line that when you come up, you'll know what we're looking for.
Okay.
The reason you're replacing a pole,
so
locating a pole. You know, just give us a little background on it.
Yep. So for Hickory Road, right now, we have a pole, 3445, and there's a guy wire that goes into a tree across the street. So we're in the process of trying to remove guy wires that are in trees and attach them to poles, because that would obviously be a better support system to make sure that the poles stay erect and that the trees, you know, if they die or whatever, we don't have to worry about. So for this hearing here, we're asking to install a pole so that we can install a guy wire to it and support our existing equipment.
That's a great explanation. I appreciate it. Is that similar to the other one? I know I'm not supposed to ask.
It's pretty much identical situation.
Thank you. I didn't ask you.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone neither for nor against? Thank you, Vice President Parika. Would you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not. Please
Okay.
close this public hearing.
We'll close that public hearing as well. Thank you. And we will go on to the mayor's communication.
May 1st, 2018. Dear municipal councilors, for your information, I regret to inform your honorable body we have received the resignation of Jeffrey DiMaggio from the Municipal Building Commission. I know you will join me in thanking Mr. DiMaggio for his service to the city. On February 20th, 2018, the traffic signal at the intersection of North Main Street and Elizabeth Street was hit and needed to be replaced. Although a claim was put through the insurance company, it was urgent that the traffic signal be replaced immediately. An internal transfer was made from citywide street lights account to citywide traffic control lights account in order to make the necessary repairs. To date, a payment from the insurance company for this claim has not been received, and the funds need to be replenished in the citywide streetlights to pay the bills for the remainder of FY 2018. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $31,864.30 from citywide reserve fund for transfer to account citywide streetlights. Upon approval, the available balance and reserve fund for transfer will be $99,193.79.
City property and claims, please.
As you know, the Dodgeville Pond Dam is in dire need of rehabilitation to ensure the longevity of the impoundment. The dam is structurally deficient and significant hazard potential due to, among other things, wear and tear, age, and the prevalence of heavy tree cover and vegetative overgrowth on the embankment, and the poor condition of the spillway. Through privately owned, the dam is a vital asset to the city for a variety of reasons, including A, critical for upstream flood control, B, infrastructure protection, C, benefits to natural systems, D, recreation use, and E, hydropower generation. And it is a key component of an envisioned source of power that will help to reduce municipal energy costs. As I communicated to your honorable body recently, EOEEA DCR Office of Dam Safety has awarded the City of Attleboro to date $875,500 in 3 separate grant awards for the Dodgeville Pond Dam renovation project. To date, we have completed the design phase, are on the cusp of commencing construction of Phase 1A, and have received $500,000 for grant for the construction of Phase 1B. 2 additional /final phases of the construction have been identified and are on the horizon in future years. The most recent estimated costs for Phase 1B constructions are as follows. Bidding and engineering oversight / administration, $186,000. Construction, $570,500. Contingency, $243,500. Subtotal, $1 million. Less EOEEA dam and seawall grant, and total needed is $500,000. In an effort to begin the necessary construction for Phase 1B as soon as possible and to utilize the $500,000 state grant, it is in the best interest of the city to move forward with a loan authorization in the amount of $500,000. Please note that because of the uncertainty of bid results, the requested loan authorization of $500,000 factors in a contingency of $243,500. And after all bids are received and verified, this loan amount is greater than the actual cost. Then I will be requesting that the loan amount be reduced appropriately. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to approve the following loan order. Ordered that $500,000 is appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction oversight, and construction costs associated with the rehabilitation of the Dodgeville Pond Dam located in Attleboro, Mass. The project, including the payment of all costs incidental or related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $500,000 under Section 7(1) of Chapter 44 of General Laws and other enabling authority, and that the mayor be authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of insurance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 7(1) of General Laws.
therefore reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Thank you. Capital improvements in city development, please. Mr. Chairman, would you like to refer that matter to the planning board and call for a public hearing on May 15th?
Please make it so.
How about so moved?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We will have a send the loan order to the planning board for comment and call for a public hearing on May 15th. Thank you.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Superintendent of Schools, David Sawyer, regarding the donation of a MakerBot Replicator 5th generation 3D printer valued at $1,350 from Michael Van Hemel to be used to promote project-based learning in the Hill Roberts Library. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept this generous donation to the City of Attleboro. Copies are in your packet.
Thank you. City property and claims, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the City Treasurer, Laurie Gignac, regarding the need for funds for payment on maturing BAN. The budget for FY 2018 was requested early last year, and the interest owed on the BANS due on May 18, 2018 was calculated using an estimate and based on an interest rate of 1.75%. When the actual borrowing settled on May 18th of 2017, the rate of interest came in higher at 2.00%. which is the result required a higher interest payment to be budgeted on each of the projects. Due to an oversight, the additional interest was not requested, which is leaving a shortfall for the payment of interest due on May 18, 2018. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to make the following transfers. $2,941.44 from Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to general government interest on temp borrowing. $1,146.47 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to school interest on temp borrowing. $14,143.62 from account Water Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to account Water Enterprise Fund interest on temp borrowing. $11,775.80 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to Wastewater Enterprise Fund interest on temp borrowing. As we know, it is of the utmost important that all debt payments be made in full and on time in order for the City of Attleboro to preserve its favorable bond rating. In accordance with Article 2, Section 29B of the City Charter of the City of Attleboro, I respectfully request your honorable body to consider that this is an emergency measure. Copies are in your packets.
Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need for funds pay for the heating and electric bills for the remainder of FY 2018. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $7,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the following accounts: $4,000 to fire and heating and $3,000 to fire, lights, and power. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer will be $92,193.79, and copies are in your packet.
Public Safety Emergency Management, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from City Collector Deb Macaccio regarding the Appellate Tax Board, ATB, case concerning tax abatement settlement with La Salette through the Assessor's Office. As part of the ATB settlement with these case, the interest is not able to be waived and thus must be paid. The calculations for interest due are up to the date agreed upon of May 17, 2017. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $43,275.30 from account undesignated fund balance / free cash, general government, to account collector interest. Copies are in your packet.
Thank you. Budget and Appropriations Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding vehicles that the Police Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus for trade-in or resale value and available for disposition. Copies are in your packet. We have a 2011 Ford Crown Victoria, 8,829 miles, poor condition. 2011 Ford Crown Victoria with 87,214 miles in poor condition.
City Property and Claims, please.
Dear Municipal Councilors, I am pleased to report that the union members have ratified a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Attleboro and the Attleboro Crossing Guards for the period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. I believe that this agreement is in the best interest of the employees and the taxpayers. The copy of the memorandum of agreement between the city parties is enclosed. Therefore, I respectfully request your honorable body to transfer $1,000 from account education-uniforms to account education-salaries school crossing guards in order to fund this collective bargaining agreement.
Budget and Appropriations, please.
Attleboro recently completed its credit rating with S&P. We are given an AA rating. Some area importance includes, but not limited to, Attleboro's strong economy. Various indicators of a strong included that we have added the NESV to our IPB, construction of Riverfront Drive and Riverfront Park. These show that Attleboro is growing. This is likely to get stronger as the administration is proposing to your honorable body that the city hire an economic development director who will be tasked with recruiting businesses to come to Attleboro. Attleboro's strong management. Various indicators include that the city uses conservative estimates to guide our budget process and estimates, and that we do not use non-reoccurring fund sources, free cash, to pay for recurring expenses or salaries. Strong budgetary performance. The fact that Attleboro does not spend more than it has, the manner in which we deal with unexpected expenses from free cash and reserve for transfer funds support our strong budgetary performance. An exception to this is our snow deficit, which we repay every year from free cash with certified adequate budgetary flexibility. This was determined by the manner in which we only have about $9.5 million. We may want to increase this to ultimately increase our credit rating. As noted above, we often use our stabilization fund to pay for annual snow deficits, but then we must pay this back with free cash. To not do so would hurt our credit rating, underscoring the importance of free cash, which some call a surplus. Strong debt and contingent liability profile. This indicates that at 2.8% debt, the city has a low debt level. However, they also indicate that our medium-term plans are negatively affecting our credit rating. This reason for this is because even though we have a low 2.8% debt, we do not have much debt capacity to take on more capital needs. It is my belief that we should move some of our ever-growing new revenues to debt capacity so that we can take on more and larger capital projects. In summary, we can improve our credit rating if reserves were to increase, which also means that decreasing reserve for transfer or free cash can negatively hurt us. Also, we fund more of our OPEB liability, we may be able to improve our credit rating. The full report is available here on the City Treasurer's webpage at www.cityofattleboro.us/document-center.view/1956/S-P- right up for May 2018 note. And Balde Haru, Mayor.
Thank you. And are there other communications?
Yes, there is.
If you read those, please.
Communications from the meeting of May 1st, 2018. Notice of a special meeting called by Mayor Paul Heroux on Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers to present the FY 2019 general government budget and water and waste enterprise budgets. Members have hand-delivered copies. Communications from WCWC LLC, 34 Extension Street, Attleboro, Mass., relative to amending the zoning ordinance pertaining to cultivating and product manufacturing in industrial zoning districts, and an outreach meeting.
Zoning and Land Use Committee, please.
Community outreach public notice from BCWC LLC, 34 Extension Street, Attleboro, Mass., for a proposed registered marijuana facility on Monday, April 30th, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the Attleboro Elks Lodge, 887 South Main Street, Attleboro, Mass. Members were given copies.
Yep.
Notice communication dated April 20th, 2018 from Marion Wrightington relative to the demolition of the carriage house at 17 Peck Street, Attleboro, Mass., recommending that if a demolition is done without permits in hand, the penalty would be a fine equal to the assessed property value as currently listed on the assessor's records instead of a $30 fine.
Ordinances, elections, and legislative matters, please.
Petition from National Grid and Verizon New England to install 2 jointly owned utility poles which anchors on Handy Street so that electrical facilities can be extended to supply new service request at a house at 164 Handy Street. Call for public hearing.
Yes. Council Palico, would you like to call for a public hearing on May 15th?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will have a public hearing for the poll on May 15th, 2018, and refer that to a Public Works Committee.
Communication from Attorney Edward Casey to Laura Dolan, Chairperson of the License Committee, relative to State Line Auto Brokers, Inc. at 1115 Washington Street, Attleboro, Mass.
Thank you. License Committee, please.
Application from Briarleaf LLC, 54 Taylor Road, Foxborough, Mass. for a special permit pursuant to Section 17-9.0, special permits, and 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses, to operate a registered medical marijuana dispensary center and a medical marijuana cultivation center. The subject premises being located at 527 Pleasant Street, more specifically assesses Plat 225, Lot Number 5, located in an industrial zoning district. Public hearing, call for public hearing on June 5th.
Council Colas, if you'd like to call for a public hearing on June 5th. Motions are all in favor? Aye. Thank you. We will have a public hearing on this matter on June 5th, 2018, and we'll refer that to Zoning and Land Use Committee.
Communications from Attorney Edward J. Casey requesting that the council vote to issue a letter of non-opposition to Briarleaf LLC, 54 Taylor Road, Foxborough, for a registered medical marijuana dispensary center and a medical marijuana cultivation center located at 527 Pleasant Street, Attleboro, Mass.
Zoning and Land Use Committee, please.
Communication from Matt and Barry Mooney of 22 Green Drive, Attleboro, Mass. regarding their concern about the sale of Highland Country Club dated April 25th, 2018.
Copies to all members, please.
Communication from Francis Balut of 120 Carrier Avenue, Attleboro, Mass. regarding grate and sidewalk lighting in front of the Lawson Senior Center and its potential hazard due to the uneven surface.
Thank you. I'm going to refer that to the administration, and a copy was provided to all councilors.
Okay, that's all I have
No,
for
we got
other
one more.
communications.
I think there's one more.
I don't have anything. Yep, I have that one. Okay, communication from Solicitor Lauren Galvin regarding Hunt hunting on conservation land.
Thank you. A copy was provided to all councilors, and we'll assign that to public safety.
That's it.
Yes. So we will move on to committee reports, starting with Council Blair.
No business this evening, Mr. President. Requested committee meeting.
Thank you. Councilor Parika? Councilor Jackson?
Thank you, President Cooper, reporting for Public Works. There's no business for Public Works for this evening. We'll call for committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Reporting for capital improvements, the City Development Committee has 3 motions to present to the council this evening. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $15,865 from the account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the account Citywide Other Financing Uses regarding the need for funds to provide a 7% construction contingency for the Phase 1A construction on Dodgeville Pond Dam renovation project, and to further transfer $15,865 from the Citywide Other Financing Uses to fund 2313 Dodgeville Pond Dam rehab.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments? Councilor Conti?
I really don't have any additional comments. Mr. Erasia was here during our committee meeting tonight about 7 o'clock, so I think if there's any issues, you can just back up the video on the internet and hear a full explanation.
Great. Thank
and that
you.
concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the mayor's request regarding the administration's amended program year 2018 Community Development Block Grant budget from July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 in the amount of $451,821. That we approve the program year 2018 annual action plan, and the request that the mayor on behalf of the city of Attleboro be authorized to submit said budget and action plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development prior to May 15th, 2018.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments, Councilor Conti?
Yes. The public can get a full explanation of all the funding from the administrative assistant, but it's basically level funding from last year. We had $414,000 last year, with $451,000 this year. That's very good. That means Deborah Brissett can be with us for another year and continue her great work. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. I forget her first name, I'm sorry.
Dorothy.
Dorothy. When Dorothy came to speak, she mentioned that the economic development piece was not meeting what she was expecting, so I just would like to highlight that. I know it's something that we're really looking at here in Attleboro. We want to have a healthy economy, and so I'm going to just keep my eye on that and make sure that this is being fulfilled in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus? Excuse me.
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to adopt the following resolution and the following priority items submitted by the mayor as part of the capital improvements plan for fiscal years 2019-2013. And, Mr. President, I'd like to waive the reading, as we did read it in the committee, in our last committee meeting. It's a 6-page document. I don't think we need to take that time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, for comments on the resolution.
Did we get a second?
Second.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Councilor Parika. comments? Council Conti?
Yes, thank you. Let me just write down a second. During the conversation last week, council was asked the question, if we were to bond $1 million, what would be the cost impact to the water rate and to the tax rate? And so I'd like to explain to you how I came to an answer, because we don't have a finance advisor to tell us whether or not what I did is right or wrong. For the tax rate, if the city were to bond $1 million on the city side, we have a $70 million levy. It's not our whole budget, because on top of the $70 million levy, and this year it might be 71.4, last year it was $70,486,000, and I forget the rest. In addition to that, we get state aid of about $32 million. We get city permits, and then there's other things that go into the budget together to get to that magical $120 million budget. But that $70 million portion of the levy that comes from real estate taxes is where that $1 million bond would apply, because we wouldn't get state aid to help us pay the bond. We wouldn't get permits to help us pay the bond. So by taking the $70 million and adding $1 million to it, it comes out to about 2.5%. And by applying that to the $14.84 tax rate, it comes to about 35 to 40 cents. So there's too many factors that go into an annual budget calculation to say, if we bond $1 million on the city side, it's going to be a 35-cent increase in your tax rate per $1,000. There's just too many things that change over the course of a year. But to think that it's 35 cents to 45 cents on the per $1,000 tax rate for both residents and commercial is an approximation. For the water rate, if we were to bond $1 million, I called Courtney and I said, Courtney, you know how many gallons of water you sold, you know how much your budget is, this is a straight calculation. She said, give me some time. That's usually something done by Barry, but Barry is out because of a family issue. I said, I'll take an estimate. And her estimate is 67 or 68 cents per 100 gallons of water, per $1 million borrowed. And remember that when I was talking about borrowing, like the bond anticipated notes that we just heard in the mayor's message, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, this is a one-year $1 million paid off in 1 year situation. So in terms of the resolution that the council is sending to the mayor, I think we already have an answer in his communication of what we're facing this year, because he says in his communication tonight to the council that the reason for our medium-term plans negatively affecting our credit rating is because even though we have a low 2.8% debt, we don't have much debt capacity to take on more capital needs. There it is in black and white. So when I'm looking at the state reporting on the debt capacity of the city of Attleboro having $41 million in debt capacity, I must be misunderstanding something, because apparently that 2.8% is the deciding factor. So I obviously have more to learn and will learn as we go forward, but I feel that we have a resolution message that the committee has worked very hard to present a message to the mayor that's meaningful. And we tried to get it done before the budget process, because we would like it to go into that 2.8% consideration. But we're fighting for the money along with the school and the Highland Country Club and everything else. It's a big process, and so Our library roof is leaking. Our school roofs are leaking. We can't ignore them. And I don't think I can make it any stronger that I'm an advocate for maintaining what we have. And I think my committee's with me. And my recommendation to the council is please adopt the resolution, send the message on to the mayor, and that's where it leaves our hands. And pray for the best. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Any other questions or comments? Vice President Parika, and then Council Hall.
Thank you, President Cooper. So I appreciate the information that you just provided us about the water and the wastewater. I don't recall that being a question that was asked here on the council floor last week. Perhaps I was incorrect about that. The other part of it is that what was quoted last week a couple times was that 2% of $10 million was $20,000 is actually $200,000. So we need to make sure that, our numbers are actually accurate. So which gives me, I'm a little bit torn on whether or not to support. You've done an incredible job and you've worked really hard on this. And so I guess I will support it, but I guess some of the discussion that I've missed about this is when I did mention this last week, hammer out what our priorities were versus, and I could have sent you an email to let you know what my priorities were. I didn't do that. There's some things that are added on here. Like I mentioned last week, again, the Brennan roof repair and the Wamsutta roof repair that are currently being considered or going through the process to be considered for MSBA refunding and things like that. And I really am having, again, I will just state, we just went through 2 different packets from the mayor's communication. We're talking an awful lot about bonding. We're talking about borrowing an awful lot of money. And then we make an argument as to why we can't do that. I'm really very concerned. We're in May. We have May and June to get through with, and we have a reserve fund for transfer that's under $100,000 right now. We have no idea what's going to happen with those kinds of things. And I think it's important, like when Jim Castro was here, it's like when we make our voting decisions here, we need to keep track of those here as opposed to, when it comes to budget time. So, and I'm a little bit, the request or alluding to the fact that, the council foresees this is, to bond for at least 1/2 in fiscal 2019, which again is $10 million. With all the other things that are going on with that, we own it. We need to maintain it. But as we move forward with all of the borrowing that we're talking about, you may hear me get a little bit more vocal about how I'm in opposition to that. So that concludes my comments.
Any other comments, Council Hall?
Yes. I mean, I understand where you come from, and I like the fact that you have a solution to present. I like the idea that you want to have a certain amount of money to do this. I'm a huge fan of capital improvements, but I do have a little bit concerned about saying that we're going to bond for the same reasons. I might have liked it a little bit better if we just said, listen, we would like to see X amount of dollars spent on this, and the administration can figure out the best way to do that in the most flexible way. But that being said, that's exactly what's going to happen. So, I just want people at home to know, and hopefully we're on the same wavelength. You're offering a solution, and I like the fact that you fully staffed that out. That's great. But people need to understand that's just our solution. That's our real solution to the administration. The administration would figure out if they want to do it, if they don't want to do it, how they're going to do it. So we're not saying to the administration, you have to do it this way. So I just want people to understand that, because I don't want people to think that we're going to start, even more money is going to start going to their water bill or whatever. So please, that's not the message we're giving. Am I correct? I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Do you want an opportunity to respond?
I think you need to understand why the charter says that the council needs to send to the administration a resolution. It is to give the administration an indication of what they're going to face when they send requests down to the council. So what this resolution says is that we recognize that there's $17 million in urgent, and you're going to send something down to us, and we're probably going to approve it. That's basically what this resolution says. We know we're not going to go out and borrow $10 million, $5 million for the water, $5 million for the city. We know that if we did, that it would cause a $3 or $4 increase in the water rate, which would cause a revolution, that it would cause a $1.50 increase in the tax rate, which people would not be happy about, and we'd all lose our jobs. But my effort was to try to establish a policy in the resolution. And it's the first time that I know in the 8 years I've been on the council that we made such a strong statement. So, Council Hall, you're correct, and Council Parika, you're somewhat correct as well. Maybe this resolution could be better written, and I apologize for that. But it was my best effort, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other, Council Kovas, I think I saw you here.
I'm on the fence about supporting this. I very much appreciate having a prioritized list and a list that says, here are the items that we feel are the most important capital improvement projects to tackle immediately. Like others have said, my concern is sending a message to the mayor saying, we suggest you bond for $10 million, regardless of if half of that is from the city's budget and half is from the enterprise fund. So especially with everything going on, it seems like every other meeting there's talk about bonding for something else, and it's a concern of mine to send that message to the administration to say, we recommend that you bond for all of these projects. But with that said, I very much appreciate the meetings we had going to visiting all of these sites and putting together this prioritized list. I don't know if this, I don't think this has happened before, and it's much better to have this as opposed to the large capital improvement book, and I definitely respect that.
Thank you, Councilor Blair, then Lucio Reynolds.
I personally think Mr. Conti did a great job with this. I've been involved with it for 18 years, and it was basically a wish list from the different departments. I sat through many an hour. It wasn't just a 10-minute, what's your priorities? It was line item, long drawn out, and it was a wish list, which was never going to happen. And as I commented the other night, the past councils have worked hard to get this to the point where Richard's got it right now. And if it's $10 million, it's $10 million. And these are priority type things. I believe we're just sending a message upstairs, our thoughts. That's an administrative decision, what he sends down to us. But we're sending a message upstairs that that's our thoughts, how to do deliberation, doing the visits, seeing what we needed or what the city needs. So this, from here on, Mr. Kovas, is an administrative decision. I think Mr. Conti's done a great job with it, and you know, I'm not one to give kudos out, but I think this has been done pretty professionally, Mr. Conti, and I think you're sending a message upstairs that I can approve of.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Delicio, I think, was next.
Thank you. Councilor Conti, yes, I agree with a lot of what's been said here tonight. I think the effort that you put in here, it's been Herculean. I think we're on the right step. I feel capital improvements has always been an essential planning tool to the city. The bonding really concerns me. And I understand, as we've talked about, even last week, we had a good discussion about it. You know, what I'm more concerned about is that we're getting the numbers right. We have to get the numbers right. We're amending, I'm sorry, we have the BANS that you talked about coming out in a little bit. Just want to make sure that the numbers are right. We had some discussion that Councilor Parika brought up, Vice President Parika brought up about some of the numbers we were throwing around last week weren't correct. You know, and all that's concerning to me. I think, you know, just because we can bond for something doesn't mean we should bond for it. We need to prioritize. A lot of these urgent projects or pieces of equipment have been sitting in an urgent status for years. So I think I'm going to support this tonight. And one thing I will say is that we need to really, and what I would like to see next year is more of a plan in terms of the actual tangible items that we really want to see replaced. Some of these that have been on there for a while, I think for whatever the reason, we didn't have this type of a document last year, and I think it would have been helpful as we spent a good amount of the second part of the year dealing with a lot of the capital improvement stuff that came, items that came down. The last thing I will say about the bonding is we actually have the final say in the bonds. Yeah. You know, it comes down in front of us. So that's ultimately where I think we need to be. We're charged with really figuring out what are we going to bond. You know, we talk about closing the checkbook quite frequently. I don't know we need to close the checkbook, but I think we need to balance it and look at it a little bit closer, especially with everything that we have going on. We're amending a bond tonight for $3.2 million, which I think is the right thing to do. That sort of fiscal prudent planning where it gives us a little bit leeway. I think this is all things we need to start looking at things a little bit different. And I'll tell you, you know, having Mr. Castro back here tonight really kind of opened my eyes around a few different things, which I think so much of what we do ties in together that I think having this sort of a start to a fiscal policy, which I know you've spoken about at length, is the right start. So I'm sorry for my long-windedness tonight, but I do appreciate the work, but I still want to caution the bonding and things of that nature. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
So again, Rick, you know I'm on board with this. I always have been, and I like what you've done here. You know, putting it to what's really needed and what we should do first. But I bring this back to Castro's point also, which I think we've all talked about, needing a financial analyst that would really be able to tell us what would be how these figures, how we verify these figures, and what the long-term impact is going to be, which we are not necessarily qualified, I can say this for myself as an individual, to know exactly what the impact would be. And that brings us back to if we had a financial analyst and we were following all of the things that we know we need, what Mr. Castro explained this evening as well, we would be able to go to that person. We could suggest all of these things. We'd see the bonding that came in other areas tonight, this bonding, and could the city withstand this impact? And then we would be able to vote appropriately on this. So I think that they are all connected, and we're trying to come to a better plan and utilize what you spend so much time on to help us with this, because these things are needed. I don't think we can just walk away from them and say, you know, we can't do it. I think it's knowing how we do it and what the long-term impact is. So I too want to support this, but I'm going to really, really push for some kind of financial analyst to come in and help us with these decisions, which I think is crucial, especially with the new school and everything else coming before us.
Thank you. Council Holmes, did you? Oh, Paul, sorry.
So, I mean, I'm listening to myself talk and everybody else talk, and I think the one difficulty I'm continuing to have, I mean, even though I said it's a great thing, what if this happens? I mean, let's just say what if. All right, let's say we send this through, the mayor says, yeah, I'm going to do it that way, sends it back down to us. We're going to say no. So why are we sending a message that we're not going to approve? That's where I just have a difficulty, okay? Because, you know, more than likely that's what's going to happen. I mean, if we were to get this right now, we're probably all going to say, this is going to be difficult. We're going to be, these people just has tax amount of money. So I'm wondering if we could just say a suggested that we have some suggested ways that we think you should pay for it. I don't know, because like I said, let's just say, I don't want to say calls our bluff. That's not what I'm not talking, but if this was to come down the way we are saying we want it done, I probably wouldn't approve it. Anyways, so I don't know how to resolve that.
Sure. Council Conti.
If I could respond to you, Council Hall. That's exactly what's going to happen. The mayor is going to send down a request for a repair to the library at $1.25 million. And we're going to have to sit here and say, are we going to do a bond anticipated note for the library repairs at $1.25 million, or let the library leak? The mayor is going to send down a request to have a maintenance building constructed for the Department of Parks and Forestry because it's disgusting. And we're going to have to say, The Parks and Forestry Department is going to have a disgusting building. They can keep having their lunch next to the fertilizer. The fire department, I don't even know where to begin with the fire department, but I don't think public safety can be, so I'm sure that what is on this list from the fire department is going to come down to the council, and we're going to have to make a decision to vote on. So the scary one is the sludge of landfill phase 2, $2.9 million. There's no option there. It must be bonded. You can try to say no, but you don't really have that choice. So, Councilor, what you said is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to send this resolution up to the mayor. The mayor's going to say, well, okay, maybe we don't need another street sweeper. Maybe we can put a year off on the Sanford Street garage. The mayor's going to make some decisions that, well, maybe we can push some of these things aside. But there are going to be requests coming down, and they do happen all year long, and we do vote them. And sometimes we vote for things where it's not unanimous, like repairing a Civil War statue. So it comes down to a body of 11 people making a decision every time that it comes down individually. This resolution, I think, is a smart resolution to say to the mayor, look, you can't bond $17 million. We won't let you do that. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. I think Councilor Holmes, did you have?
No, that's okay, thank you.
Thank you, President Cooper. So I guess to kind of sum up, it was interesting, Julie, that you used the word suggestion, because that's what's been rolling around inside of my head with regards to this. You know, the first sentence, in summation, the council is of the opinion that the nearly 17 million in urgent CIP items could be less formidable if we were to bond for at least one half in fiscal year 2019. So I guess I don't want to make that suggestion. I don't want to put a number on it. I would like to say perhaps some, or whatever is determined to be the most urgent, or any of those things. So it's that sentence right there that that's what I have a big problem with. All the rest of it is beautiful. But making this, if the mayor wants to send out, it is our decision. But he could look through this and say, okay, I'm going to pick 2 from page 1, 3 from this one, and do the math on how much $10 million is. But these numbers, again, I go back to what I've said and what Councilor Delisio said, these numbers aren't accurate numbers. Like when we go, these are numbers that have been sitting in the CIP book for years. They haven't necessarily been updated. So that the Studley roof repair, we don't have a design for it, and it says $55,000, but you know we're going to need X, Y, and Z, and it's been there on the CIP for the last 5 years. We haven't changed the price code on it, so the building costs have changed, and so now we're going to say, yes, we're going to bond for this. We're going to be here like, well, it was only 55 grand, but no, it's going to be $120,000. So those are just, if the mayor would like to, evaluate this document, and what I'm struggling with is the suggestion of bonding for $10 million. I don't like to give people I'm the queen of setting appropriate expectations. You guys have sat here and listened to me about Beagle Club Road and the expectations you have to have down there. I don't want anyone's expectations to be that we will support whatever comes down the pike for $10 million, because that's the number we gave them. I'm just uncomfortable with that.
Councilor Black?
We do have the ultimate final say on what comes down and what we bond. And at some time or other, we know that this $10 million is not out of sight. We know it's more. Maybe putting a figure on it bothers some people, but in actuality, the gentleman in the front office makes those decisions, what he sends down. And it's up to us to scrutinize what he sends down and vote on them. I hope he does a good job. I hope he makes the right choices. But when it comes down, it's up to us to vote on it. And when it comes down, it's been past practice, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's always come down with a funding situation. Whether we take it out of the rainy day fund and pay it back, out of free cash when it's certified. A lot of this is the administration. And I was quite probably critical last week, and I am still not completely, or I'm leery of how it's going to turn out. But that's not our job. That's the job in the front office to send it down. And then we can look at it. We have the ultimate. If he sends down bonding that you people aren't satisfied with, don't bond it. End of my comments.
Thank you.
Things break. We know things are gonna break. And I think what Mr. Conti's point here was, you know, you bring up a good point, is we have such a sundry way of paying for these projects when they come down. I think we're trying to get on a path where we can plan a little bit better, and I think this is the first step in that. And when I say that we have the ultimate say, you know, I would be hard pressed to see a situation where I support a $10 million or a $17 million bond. But again, it depends on what that bond is for. What's broken, what's the severity, what's the impact, all of this. We need to, when that stuff comes down, and we saw it tonight, we had the city auditor come down to answer our questions. We have to trust in the financial team that we have, and that is the mayor, that is the auditor, that is the treasurer, that is the budget administration, that is the people sitting in this room. I just want to make sure that we're sending the right message, and when it's bond, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not setting a precedent that we're going to be in these messages, and these messages are recommendations. These are a planning tool at best. We've all sat here in the past and complained when they're not listened to. We've sat here and we had a budget message that was voted down, and there was no budget message on the record. These are real planning tools that we have at our advantage, but it can't just be, and I loved what Mr. Castro said about the us versus them. I think too long it's been the us versus them. I think there's a perception it's an us versus them now. Who loses is the taxpayer in those situations. The trust but verify is the way I've always run my business at the bank, at the RMV. It's got to be a trust but verify, and that's what we have here. So we can send it down, it can be sent down, and if it's in Mr. Conti's committee, if it's in Ms. Jackson's committee, Sarah's, any one of our committees, we can ask for the department heads, we can ask for the mayor to come down, and that's what we need to do, because that's how we're ultimately gonna have that check and balance. And, you know, I feel bad because I think this is probably the best capital improvement message that we had. And, you know, I just don't want that to get lost in this. But I think, you know, in closing, I can't support $10 million or $17 million, but we have to see what comes down and what breaks.
Councilor Cobus.
After thinking about this more and looking at it, the $10 million makes me nervous. I do have the understanding that a portion of that will come from grant money or potentially Chapter 70, Chapter 90, whatever. I love everything else in this. It's that requesting that we bond for half of the $19 million. So I move to strike these.
Make a motion to amend.
Move to amend by striking the paragraph that says, in summation, the council is of the opinion that the nearly $19 million in urgent CIP items could be less formidable if we were to fund at least one half in fiscal year 2019. The council foresees this as a first step contingent upon favorable economic factors to be implemented in coming years to ensure progress toward the completion of outstanding programs. The establishment of such a policy will result in the timely replacement of vehicles and equipment and minimize deferred maintenance.
Second.
Thank you. Just to be clear, it's, what I read says nearly 17 million, you said 19?
I may have an older copy.
And it says if we were to bond, not fund. So I just want to make sure that you're striking the right thing.
Yes, that was my intent, to strike that. I'm reading off an older copy.
Okay, great. So the motion is in order. Any comments on the motion to amend? Council Hall.
Can you read the motion one more time, please?
It's the second to last paragraph
Okay.
of the motions. Any other? Council Cooper.
I would support Mr. Kobus's motion to amend and remove that paragraph. I don't think that ending it with, it is the goal of this council to have a more sophisticated program in which CIP funding requests are coupled with fiscal policy, because I think that's exactly what we've been saying here all night. So that I would most certainly support Mr. Kobus's motion.
Any other council?
Yes, Mr. President, I'm going to support this motion to strike the paragraph because I want to see a unified voice in the council. And so the reason why we make motions to amend is so that we can get a motion to a point where we can support it. So if this motion would get more of the council to approve the resolution, I'm going to support it because I'd like to see more fellow councils on board with the message. And so with that, I'm in favor of the motion to strike the paragraph, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Councilor Delicio.
I'll support the chair in this if this is the way that you feel. I think that it's appropriate. I would be more in favor of just striking the first sentence and putting something in summation that council is of the opinion it's necessary to establish a fiscal policy, and then keep the rest of it. But if the chair feels as though that this is appropriate, I'm going to support the chair in this.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan, Reynolds, no, you're all set.
Can I just ask that you repeat what you just said, please, because
So just to clarify, we're talking about
the
amendment as seconded and as proposed. If council, and that's what we're talking about right now. If you want to talk about another amendment after we talk about this one, I'm happy to entertain that. But right now, we're talking about the motion to amend and remove that paragraph that Councilor Kobus read, seconded by Councilor Parika.
Then I'll wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds.
I think I'm on track here, but, tell me if I'm not. I don't want to see it go, personally. I like the way that Councilor Conti wrote it. I understand the reasonings for it. And so may I say this, is that I like the first sentence, and if we were going to do something, it should read more, if we were to bond a portion of this in fiscal year 2019.
So
I can just say no. We're talking just about what Councilor Kobus said, removing it.
Yes.
So if I disagree with removing it in that manner,
yes,
I'm just going to vote nay.
That's right.
Okay.
Councilor Hall.
I will approve the amendment.
Thank you. Other Councilor Black.
I will follow the chair's suggestion.
Thank you. Councilor?
Would you like me to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kick the can.
Exactly.
Better than the bucket.
President Cooper.
Thank you. So I, too, will support it, and thank you for all your work, Councilor Conti. But I think we're somewhat short-sighted in a single amendment when it says the word bond in other places throughout the document. And that concludes my comments. Thank you. So the motion is in order to amend, made by Councilor Kobus, seconded by Councilor Parika. Any other comments about the amendment? Councilor Dolan.
Sorry about this. So,
don't be sorry.
Councilor Conti, you support the amendment as stated by Councilor Kobus. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody need any additional clarity on what we're voting? So with this, we will have a roll call vote. The roll call vote on The amendment will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
No.
8 yeas, 2 nays.
Motion passes. So we are on to the motion as amended. Are there any comments or questions? Councilor Holmes and then Reynolds.
I think this is a situation where in the next 5 years, we're going to really see how this worked out, because this is the foundation to kind of then revisit how we've been spending the money. So it's the first time this has been done differently, and I want to thank you for putting so much work and energy into this. I will support it. And with that being said, it is suggestions that are going up. Tonight we had $30,000 due to an oversight. I'm more concerned about trying to figure out and really research oversights than I am about us sending a message up. So when messages come down for us, we approve them, but we have to kind of ask these difficult questions at times of department heads. And I'd rather be proactive, as I keep mentioning, than have a situation that we have to then use emergency funds or it's an emergency situation. So I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you all set, Councilor Reynolds?
Okay, so I like the idea of the amendment taking out the at least half, but I would like it to read, and this is where I can say this, is this correct? Cooper? In summation, the council is of the opinion that the nearly $17 million in urgent CIP items could be less formidable if we were to bond at least a portion of this in fiscal year 2019. And when it comes down, we make that decision ourselves, what we want to do, whether it's half or not. We're not saying, but we're not giving a number, but we're saying that, again, it's our decision, which it is.
So, just to be clear, you're
I'm advocating that we change the last half of that sentence to bond at least a portion of this $17 million in fiscal year 2019.
So, again, just so I'm clear and so everyone's clear, what you're asking is to add the paragraph back in, but change at least one half to read a portion of.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Again, okay, so the motion is?
It's denied.
No second. Yeah, thank you. Councilor Dolan.
So, I feel like we're kind of splitting hairs a little bit because, like almost everybody said, we have to rely on, everybody, the mayor, Stan, everybody, even, Mr. Castro who came. We have a group of people that I would assume mostly make the right decisions, I guess you could say, that do what we need to do for the city. Us, even if we kept the word bond in, it doesn't mean that the mayor's going to be like, okay, great, let's do it, and send it down. And there's a process. So I think with the word bond, we're splitting hairs in whether, I think it's best if it's not in there. I like that idea. But, you have to put forward, it's almost like putting forward a budget. You have to put forth something that's true. Whether it gets approved or not, I mean, like the school department, they put forward what they need, knowing full well they're probably not going to get the whole thing. But you have to put forward what's true. And this, through research and all your hard work and our visits and everything that you've done, is what's true, as we know it, as best we know it, and as honest. So I think bond, no bond, this isn't going to change anybody's mind that we're going to go bond $10 million or not. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Councilor Parika.
Thank you very much. Just again, as we're reviewing I'm reviewing the document, and as Mr. Cooper mentioned when he stepped out, that I would like to make a motion to amend the following, where it says recommended funding, the following council recommendations for bonding. I would make the suggestion that the to be, quote, the following are I might need a little help with forming this sentence a little bit, but this is what I would like it to say. The following is what the council has identified as top priorities.
So,
Second.
well,
Hold on. Hang on.
you can second, but the motion's not in order yet, because we have to be a little
I got it.
clearer on. So as you write that, we'll just hit the pause button.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. The following is what the council has identified as top priorities for potential funding.
Okay, so just to be clear.
Yes.
Read your amendment, and then we can entertain the second, and then.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to amend the following. That under recommended funding, on page, the second to last page, that the following are what the council has identified as top priorities for potential funding.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any discussion?
Sure.
Councilor Parika?
Yes. So, as Mr. Cooper said, after we've made the motion to amend, this is what it's just trying to keep things consistent within there. And that these are the items that, through the, site visits and all of those things, I mean, we all recognize the fact that, Park and Forestry, as he said, needs new buildings. So the guys aren't eating, their lunch next to fertilizer and things like that. So these are the, instead of having it for the bonding, this is simply just to take the word bonding as where we may or may not be splitting hairs, but I think it's a really strong difference between what we would suggest would have a better chance of being approved on the council floor as opposed to just that this is what we want for bonding. So I think that kind of identifies what our top priorities are. So then, Mr. Mayor, make your decisions and send them back to me. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor DeLisio?
Thank you. The consistency is important in this message, and I'm sure that that's what Council Carney has strived for. What I would add is by removing the word bonding and replacing it with funding, it opens the door for other financing sources to be reviewed and explored. And I think, again, drawing back on the talent, the experience of our financial team, I'm in full support of this amendment.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
So I would just jump on what Councilor DeLisio was saying. The reason I wanted the bonding in there, actually, is because we've gone over this for years and just put funding in and not gotten the funding. It comes back down here and we just leave it alone. So, I think that what you've done is admirable, Councilor Conti, by saying that you're just trying to make it get through. I get what you're trying to do here, but the bottom line is this has been going on for years, and we really haven't addressed it when we wanted to about the money. So I will go along with Councilor DeLisio that we change all the bonding and put funding, and that could mean bonding. I mean, if we're, again, we're splitting hairs, but, if that's the way you want it to read, then we'll make it read that way. But that's basically, in the long run, if there isn't funding anywhere else but borrowing the money, then we're bonding it. So for the sake of perception, if you will, I'll put funding in there. I'll go along with that, and I think that Councilor DeLisio is making a point that he wants to go along with Councilor Conti, and I'm just saying it is what it is, and the real word would be ultimately bonding.
You can't find it somewhere
You can't find it anywhere else.
Councilor
That's
Holmes,
where
did
you
you
go.
have a question?
Thank you. I know.
No. Councilor Hall. Here, Councilor Dolan?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, this vote is to vote the amendment. Any other questions? And we will have a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Hall. So this is to vote the amendment as proposed by Vice President Parika and seconded by Councilor Kobes.
Okay. Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. DeLisio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
I can't count. 9 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. Motion passes. So we are to the motion as amended. Any other questions, Councilors Conti, Cobus, and then Reynolds?
Thank you.
I don't have
Mr. President, I believe that we have succeeded in the democratic process of putting together a difficult message to the mayor, and that during this process, each councilor has been able to express freely their opinions and attitudes towards the message. And I see the hour getting late, so I'm going to make a motion to move the question.
Thank you. So the question, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. There is no more debate on this issue, and we will have a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Do we vote on, point of order, do we vote on the motion to move?
The question.
The question?
Yes, that's what we're voting on right now. And then we will go to vote as amended.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
No.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
8 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes. On to the motion as amended by roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Time out. So we voted to move the question. Yes, so the question is moved, no further debate, but we are now voting on the resolution as amended by roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Hall.
As amended, right?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
9 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes the business that the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee has to bring before the council this evening, but we are looking forward to our next meeting at the appropriate time.
Nice job, Richard.
Good job.
Good job, Richard.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all. It's been a great experience. Thank you all.
Councilor Colvin.
That's already. Reporting for the Zoning and Land Use Committee from the docket of November 21st, 2017. Move to adopt the following amendment to the zoning ordinance in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 40A, as amended. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Attleboro that the zoning ordinance be amended as follows. Section 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses. The proposed amendment to 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses of the zoning ordinance. 1. Amend 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses by deleting subsection B2D in its entirety and re-alphabetize accordingly. And the line being struck is a copy of the registered marijuana dispensary certificates of registration. Item 2, amend 17-10.15 registered marijuana dispensary uses by deleting subsection D1A through D1F in its entirety and insert thereof the following. 1. No portion of any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use shall be located within 100 feet of any residential zoning district. 2. No portion of any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use shall be located within the following designated areas. The distance between any building containing a registered marijuana dispensary use and the uses cited below is established as follows. Said distance shall be measured in a straight line without regard to intervening structures or natural features from the closest point of any registered marijuana dispensary building in which a registered marijuana dispensary is located or is to be located to the nearest point of a lot line containing the following uses. A, 100 feet of a principal residential use. B, 500 feet of a public or private school. C, 500 feet of a registered daycare center, family daycare home, and group daycare home. D, 500 feet from any public park, recreational area, or facility which children commonly congregate.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Councilor Cobus.
I think we've talked about this over and over again. I think it stands on its own.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
This part of it, I agree with you, yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Congratulations. Well done.
And that concludes my business for the Zoning and Land Use Committee. I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you. Councilor Vice President Parika.
Thank you, President Cooper. Reporting for traffic and transportation. I have no business this evening and would like to call for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Perfect, thank you. And did we do
I
the same
did.
for Councilor Jackson?
Yes, we
Thank you. Councilor Delicio.
Thank you, President Cooper. Reporting for budget and appropriations. I have 4 motions this evening. From the docket of May 15th, 2018, I move to adopt the following emergency preamble. That the Attleboro Municipal Council vote to take action as provided in the city charter, section 2-9B, subsection B, regarding the emergency which presently exists relative to the request of the mayor to transfer money to pay interest for maturing BANS as follows. $2,941.44 from account 112410000-578300, citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1701000-592510, general government interest on temp borrowing, $1,146.47 from account 112410000-578300, citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 130010000-592510, school interest on temp borrowing, $14,143.62, from account 6100-57830, water enterprise fund reserve fund for transfer to account 6100-59251, water enterprise fund interest on temp borrowing, $11,775.80 from account 6000-57830, wastewater enterprise fund reserve fund for transfer to account 6000-5925110, wastewater enterprise fund interest on temp borrowing due to time constraints involved. Payment is due May 18th, 2018. The nature of this emergency makes it necessary to take action without waiting the prescribed time as approved in the city charter.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments, Councilor Delicio?
My comments will count for the next motion as well. Simply put, this is an outstanding liability. We heard in the mayor's communication tonight that when we put out for these, the interest was actually thought it was going to be 1.70%. Actually came in at 2.0%. So this is an outstanding liability. We need to address in order to maintain our credit rating.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Vice President Parika.
Thank you very much. The only thing I wanted to just make note of when I was reviewing the mayor's communication, when we get the rolling tally of what is in the reserve fund for transfer, the $4,087.91 was not deducted from that line as we move forward. So when I was looking at what the balance was in subsequent thank you, subsequent appropriations, that amount wasn't there, or it had not yet been deducted. There are, I mean, it is up to $30,000, but that comes out of the Water Enterprise Fund and things like that. So that's just one of the things I wanted to point out.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, this is on the declare it emergency preamble. Any other questions? Hearing none, 2/3 majority roll call vote is required, and the roll call vote will begin with Councilor Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. President Cooper, on the second one, do I need to read the account names and account numbers again? Where
Just the names.
Just names, very good. From the docket of May 15th, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor as an emergency measure to make the following transfers to satisfy the payment of interest on maturing BANs before the due date of May 18th, 2018. $2,941.44 from Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to general government interest on temp borrowing, $1,146.47 from Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to school interest on temp borrowing, $14,143.62 from account Water Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to Water Enterprise Fund interest on temp borrowing, $11,775.80 from account Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to account Wastewater Enterprise Fund interest on temp borrowing in accordance with Article 2, Section 2-9, subsection B of the City Charter of the City of Attleboro. I respectfully request your honorable body to consider this an emergency measure.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments, Councilor Davis?
No, just after reading that, I think I could challenge Councilor Conti for an auctioneer.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote required, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor to amend the use of full funds for the rehabilitation voted of. I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. I move to approve the request of the mayor to amend the use of funds for the rehabilitation of the Russell F. Tennant Building voted on February 21st, 2017, to allow for any project expense authorized in the loan order authorization. Please note, any portion of the loan authorization not needed will later be rescinded after the project is closed.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order.
Just want to thank Deb Gould again for coming down, explaining this to us this evening. And I want to also take a second and thank Virginia for her help on this. There was some confusion. She had 18 people peppering her, and she was able to really help me kind of clean up this. So, Virginia, if you're listening, which I know you are, I appreciate the assistance.
A little delay.
She'll hear it now.
She has a big smile on her face, so.
Any other,
Yeah, I seconded.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Excuse me, she's not here. Mr. Conti?
I'm here, and yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $1,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Animal Control Heating regarding the need for funds to pay heating bills at the animal shelter for the remainder of fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order.
This is as easy as they come. It's just, spoke with Derek Corsi. He just needs to make sure they have enough in the account to heat and even probably cool the animals at the for the rest of this fiscal year.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Council Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Perica?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. And finally, I just want to remind everyone that this Saturday is the annual the 10-mile river cleanup. So river rats, get ready. I don't know if a certain city council president's going to be in his ways with me this year. But 8 to 11, we're meeting at the community gardens. It's a great event. We've seen great improvement and progress in the cleanup over the last several years. So hope everyone can come out and join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to call for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Perfect. Thank you. So I will not be here, but if you want to borrow the waiters, they're hanging in my garage. So come by and get them.
I will.
Councilor Dolan.
Reporting for licenses, I have no business this evening, but I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, President Cooper. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the donation of $125 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Studley Elementary School in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro. The mayor hereby requests your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments or questions?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. This requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Councilors Delicio and Perica absent.
From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of the mayor to approve the request of, twice it's there, to approve the request of the mayor regarding the donation of 4 cases of diapers and 1 case of assorted items, including baby lotions, bibs, pacifiers, bath toys, diaper cream bottles, and water bottles with an estimated value of $300 from Father Ted Brown of La Salette to the Children's Center at Attleboro High School. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
Second.
Did I hear? Councilor Holmes, second. I think you beat him.
She said it.
You said it loud enough. You got it. Thank you. Thank you.
And it's pretty self-explanatory.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes again 8-0. And I said absent last time, and I saw some faces scrunch up, so it's excused, not absent for Perica and Delicio. Thank you.
President Cooper, when I read these last time, I gave the model numbers. Can I skip them and the rest of the motions, please? Yes. From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Veterans Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. 1 typewriter and keyboard and 1 keyboard tray. They are obsolete and or used.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
9-0, and again, excused Councilor Delicio.
From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Personnel Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. 1 electric typewriter, 1 adding machine, and they're both in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions, comments, problems? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. 9
And my final,
0 nays.
Sorry, I apologize. Also from the docket of May 1st, 2018, my final motion, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment the fire department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body.
Point of order, sorry, just some clarification. Typically with these things, it does actually come down to a roll call vote, and I don't know if that's accurate or not. I have that.
I thought property was a voice.
So we had voice votes for the 125,
All
and...
mine say voice.
Okay.
Mine too.
Just do too.
Mine all say voice vote required.
When it was my recollection that when things like that always required a roll call vote because we're getting rid of property not accepted.
Property's always been a voice vote.
Yeah, I've always remembered it as voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Put the book away.
I've always remembered mostly his voice, yeah.
Okay.
If I may just continue with my point of order, when I was city property and claims, one of the things that came through is that people would make the request that instead, when we are disposing of something, it would need a roll call vote, and that was silly, and it should be a voice vote, but we would need to make a change to the ordinance to have that happen. So that's the only reason why that popped into my mind, but continue on as the way you are, and that completes my comment.
So we are at the last motion.
So I will reread that.
Thank you.
From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment the fire department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. 1996 E1 fire engine, and it is in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. So, disposition of city property real estate and disposition of city property tangible is roll call majority vote. So, we're going to call for a roll call vote on this. I'll call for a roll call vote, and then we'll go back and do the ones we did as voice votes as roll call votes over again.
Just the vote, or you want me to read them again?
We'd have to just read them. We can waive the reading of the bins and that one.
Sure.
So for this, I'm going to call for a roll call vote, and the vote will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Second time since 1946 I've been wrong. Yes.
I'll ask your wife later.
It's the first time since 1971 I've been right, so it's okay.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you.
Want me to start at the beginning? I mean, I don't think I have to do it for Stop and Shop gift certificates, because it's not property. Do you want me to do it for the typewriter and keyboard?
Just for disposition, yeah, but it did say it in all of mine, so you only need to go back to the previous one on the typewriter and adding machine.
And
All
not the
others-
typewriter and keyboard?
You would have to go back to that one. For the Veterans Department.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the 1, 2, 3rd. I'm on the third one, Mark. Okay?
Yep.
So from the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Veterans Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition: 1 typewriter, 1 keyboard trade. They are either obsolete and or used.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions? Hearing none. This requires a roll call vote. The vote will begin with Councilor Hall.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment that the Personnel Department would like to declare surplus, and hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition: 1 electric typewriter and 1 adding machine. They're both in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in. This will. Gee, don't let me go back to that. This requires a roll call vote, and it will begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Kobus?
Yes.
Vice President Parika?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
President Cooper?
Yes.
10 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Finally, from the docket of May 1st, 2018, I move to approve the request of Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding equipment the fire department would like to declare surplus. And hereby respectfully request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition: a 1996 E1 fire engine, and it is in poor condition.
Second. Didn't
We
we already vote
did that
this?
one.
We already did
Oh,
that.
that's the one we did do.
I withdraw my second.
That is all the motions I have this evening for city property and claims, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Holmes.
I'm reporting from Personnel and Human Service Committee. I don't have any business tonight, but there's just some appointments that we're looking forward to having come down from the Municipal Building Commission. There's some openings, so I'm just hoping that the administration can bring those down so we can have fully functioning boards and commissions here in the city. And that concludes my comments, and I will have a committee meeting next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hall.
I am reporting for ordinance elections and legislative matters. I have no business this evening, but would love to have a committee meeting at the next available time.
Great, thank you. Moving on to new business. Vice President Parika.
Thank you very much, President Cooper. I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation to elect Virginia Stewart, 101 South Avenue, Attleboro, as the administrative assistant to the municipal council for a term of 2 years, term to end February 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any questions or comments?
Just very briefly, that Virginia has surpassed her 90 days. She's doing it is probably one of the toughest jobs in the city of Attleboro. She's managing our 11 varied personalities on a regular basis, especially within the first, 45 minutes before the council starts on a Tuesday. So, it's our job to appoint her to that term. I'm thrilled to be able to be the one who got to read that piece of new business for Virginia, and hope to God that she makes it to the end of February 2020 and doesn't leave us in the meantime, because we'll be in all sorts of different kinds of trouble. So thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? This requires a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 10-0 and will be referred to Personnel and Human Services Committee. Before we motion to adjourn, just reminding you all, you received the notice of the special meeting on May 8th. In addition, we'll have the council photo on May 8th here in the council chamber. And just as a reminder, I will be out of town Thursday through Sunday at the Kentucky Derby, so I'll be thinking about all of you while I'm dressed in my fancy bow tie and suit. So thank you all. At this point, I would entertain a motion. Oh, Councilor Leonard.
What time, May 8th, do you want us here?
I'd have to check my email, which
6:15.
Yeah, 6:50. We're doing the Dunkin' Donuts before then, or is it all happening?
I thought it was the same.
So we'll check the time. As soon as I can use my electronic device, I'll put it with
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? No. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, 9:39. Thank you.
Eat this?